Welcome to a new episode of Outside the Panels with your host, Johnny the Machine Hughes.
Welcome everyone to an episode of Outside the Panels, and have I got a show for you. This time around we're speaking to not just one, but two creators from Ahoy Comics and about their new book that's due out this week. Russell and Bryce Ingman, how's it going?
Good. Excellent. Thanks for having us on, Machine.
Yeah, thanks. You're welcome. Glad you could find the time to join us. Should we start at the top and work our way down? It seems like a great place to go. How did you two meet and get to collaborate?
Oh, I'll let Bryce feel that. This is a long, winding story.
All right, okay, guys, get comfy, get some popcorn. We're going to be a while.
I mean, Mark and I have known each other for literally a couple decades and have always supported each other's creative endeavors. And so when Mark started to have some success as a writer, I was really excited for him. Mm-hmm. And he's been really supportive in my attempts to break into the field. We went to high school together. In college.
So
we made a short-lived public access TV show together, and yeah, we've known each other for a long time, basically. Yeah. Bryce is in a lot of ways the guy who got me into comics. He's the one who gave me, like, V for Vendetta, and like Martha Washington Goes to War. He gave me a lot of the comics I that made me discover the medium as like actually having a lot of great artistic merit. Like. Mm-hmm. He kind of was the one who turned me on to it.
It's strange that you talk about V for Vendetta and Martha Washington, because your book, My Bad, is the polar opposite. if there's a polar opposite, this is it.
Yeah.
So how did that go about? Because I mean, I've looked at the book. I'm privy to getting the advance. It seems to me like a bit of a swan song love of Bronze Age, Silver Age stuff. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, it's very much like sort of, I think, an homage, yet sort of like a spoof of sort of the Bronze Age comics that we read as kids. But it really is about like how I think revisiting that sort of comic universe in the way that we would read it as an adult. So like all these people are just basically narcissists. They're just doing this not to really save anybody, but just because this is what they enjoy doing.
There you go. And this is what we're talking about. So you can see some of the kind of touches on this, I guess.
Yeah, I would say it's a loving spoof. Like there's no hate in our approach to these comics, but trying to do something a little bit different with some of the cliches and concepts. That's really what the book sort of came out of. Was initially I was wondering and thinking about the trope of putting a superhero inside a big glass bubble or trap, and how it just has happened in comics and comic related media for 50 years or more. And trying to do something a little bit new with that. Like, what if the villain caught the wrong hero and felt kind of bad about it?
Oh, shucks.
Exactly.
God damn it.
All right. I think that's kind of the feel of the whole book is similar to that. It's like, hey, you've seen this before, but here's something different with that thing you've seen before.
Cool. Excellent.
So my half of the story sort of explores the trope of the secret identity. It's about this hero, the Chandelier, who he's the heir of a lamp fortune. It becomes like a vigilante superhero at night. Becomes the Chandelier at night, and he gets a gift from a villain, like to his actual address, like his like normal human identity, and this bugs him out. Like, does this mean that Emperor King, the villain, knows my secret identity? So it really is about this gift. This first issue is all about this birthday present, just getting inside his head. And the whole issue is about him just sort of trying to figure out what this means, that he got this birthday present addressed to his true identity from a villain. And it really is kind of about how much that would actually that would mess with your head to actually to maintain a secret identity as much of it would saving you, sort of grief.
Yeah.
I think it's basically it's about how a secret identity is kind of more trouble than it's worth.
Definitely. I mean, the thing I liked about this story is the disdain that his hired help have for him. All right. There's obvious nods and touches. If you're reading this and you're thinking that's not Bruce Wayne or Lamont Cranston, then you need to do this, all right? Because clearly is a poke at those two characters potentially, and you've got the Alfred-esque character in there as well. But it's the disdain and the sarcasm. Because I mean, I know Alfred's dry anyway, but this guy, he's like, just the line. Apart from decades of servitude, I was laughing when I read that. So that was
thanks.
Cool.
Yeah, I originally kind of pitched the idea of like this superhero getting this present from a villain as a Batman story.
It's happened. It happened
and Marie Javins, my editor, said not in a million years. So I took it to Ahoy and matched up with Bryce's story, and it works 100% better this way because I can be much more sarcastic about the characters and make them much less likable, which I think really makes it work.
There's not to pour water on your cornflakes there, but there's a Batman special. I think it was maybe the Batman annual last year, and the whole story was about how every year the Joker sends him a present
to Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, and then to one year, it gets to the point where he doesn't give him a present, and Bruce Wayne's like, "Where's my gift?" It's in there. So
yeah, maybe that's why. Maybe that's why they said never in a million years.
Maybe that's why.
Yeah, never in a million. Never in a million years. Let me just write down the notes and pass it on to somebody else. Yeah, because that never happens in comics, right? Well, no comment. I don't want to get you fired from any books. It's fine. Don't say anything.
I think if anyone was going to get me fired by now, I would have already done it.
So, Mark, you're an existing writer in the comics field. You've had huge success with lots of different books. Red Sonja, Second Coming, which in its own way is a little bit like this in that it takes that idea of a superhero character like Superman, and then introduces religion and the sort of like the human way of how to do things, and then messes with it completely. Yeah,
right.
So
how wielding this power and this sort of meditation of power we've created called the superhero universe would actually work in the context of real life, dealing with flawed personalities and people who are basically just doing it for their own gratification and not for any real higher purpose.
So over on our sister show, Flipside Focus, we've talked about Second Coming. My colleague Josh absolutely loves the book. I think the book's great as well, but he absolutely totally bought into it. I mean, Ahoy have this little sort of jeu de vivre, if you would, of taking existing ideas. Superhero meets Son of Christ, for example. The homages in this book, and of course, Dragon Flyman,
right?
Dragonfly from the Wrong Earth. Is that kind of why you wanted to go to Ahoy? Because I read somewhere that you had ideas for the Second Coming going to DC Vertigo, and it
was originally signed for DC Vertigo. They were the ones who approved it, and ironically, it started out as a Superman pitch. And I was talking to Dan DiDio and Marie Javins at a lunch, and I was trying to pitch them on letting me write a Superman series. And every idea I brought up, he was just like, "Oh, that's been done. That's been done. That's been done." So he basically knocked down my whole list, and he said, "Look, you're writing about an 80-year-old character. Pretty much everything you could think of has been done." And I said, "Well, I do have this one idea, and it's about Superman sharing an apartment with Jesus Christ." And he's like, "Well, that's not been done." But he said, I get death threats if Superman refuses to say the Pledge of Allegiance, so there's no way I'm greenlighting that. He said, "But just change it to a creator-owned character, and we'll publish it on Vertigo." So that's when I created Sunstar, which was very liberating because I can make Sunstar way more of a jerk than Superman would have been. But then, yeah, it became controversial before it even came out, and they politely asked me if I'd be interested in taking it somewhere else, and I had no problem with that, mostly because they let me keep the money, so that was nice. And then also Ahoy, I knew was there and was looking more for this sort of project. They sort of build themselves as the funny Vertigo, so it seemed like the next natural stop for this title.
Cool. So let me ask you a question then. So Bryce, you mentioned that you're relatively new to writing for comic books, yeah?
Yeah, I had my first story published in 2019. So
how is it then? Because I spoke to a couple of creators who are working on Vampirella at the moment, Tom Sinowski and Janine Aitchison. And again, Janine's quite new to the business, where Thomas has been around the block, you won't mind me saying. How is it then comparing or trying to sort of, how do you guys I know you've got a history, how do you manage to get your writing to fit? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if you've got someone who's like super experienced and you've got like the rookie, like, throw me the ball. It's like, are you going to catch it? I mean, yeah. I'm a Dolphins fan. Nobody's catching balls. So,
yeah, well, I worked with Mark a little bit at Dynamite on some of the spin-offs of Red Sonja. They were looking for a lot of Red Sonja product from Mark, and at times he didn't have the time for all of it, so he enlisted me to help him with some of that. So we got some practice in kind of working on that collaboration then. But I think this project has been so different because of the way it started. It actually was going to be a backup in Second Coming originally, before Mark got involved with My Bad. And so the story about the trap, catching the wrong superhero and torturing him, was being produced to be a Second Coming backup. And at one point we actually talked about it being in the same universe as Second Coming, because like you said, we could kind of feel that there was a fit there. So some of that work was already produced, it was done and penciled, and they were already throwing some colors on it and stuff when Mark came onto the project. So Mark started working on his story. I started working on some other stories that tied in to his characters to bring the world together more. And then by the end of the series, we've actually come up with a system where we're plotting together and then saying, you do these 3 pages, you do these 2 pages, you do these 2 pages, and trading back and forth, and helping each other edit things to smooth things over and make the voices sound correct. I think that method that we kind of ended up on at the end of this season of My Bad is pretty effective for both of us.
Cool. I'd be an awful collaborator, I've got to say. Every time I've tried writing stories, whether it be comic books or whether it be novels or screenplays or whatever, I hate writing dialogue. So if I had a writing partner, I'd be like, right, this is what's going to happen. Get him to say something cool. Go on, off you go. Crack on.
I love dialogue. I think Mark does too, so we might have to fight over that.
So you need a scene set. If you need a scene set, just,
Yeah.
Do you find that the popularity of The Boys, especially as a TV show, rather than the comic book from whence it originated, do you find that the popularity of The Boys kind of helps this alternative universe, even though tonally The Boys is like dramatically different, or if I'll use my words, dramatically different to My Bad? And that's to both of you guys. What do you think? Does that help? Hinder?
Yeah, I think so. I think it makes people more receptive to these sort of alternate comic book universes. And I think really ultimately, in a more general sense, every successful comic book helps all other comic books. It really brings fans into the genre, and it also sort of stretches what people are willing to accept as a mainstream comic, or as something that they're willing to take a chance on. So yeah, even though you're right, there's very little resemblance tonally to The Boys. It definitely benefits from the success of things like The Boys, because people are open to not only it's convince people that the dissection of superheroes isn't really dead as a genre, even though it feels like it's something that's been done to death starting in the 80s. There's still life in, because it's ultimately a dissection of power and what is the appropriate way to use power, and that never gets old.
I think for me, one of the probably the biggest, I suppose, hits of that genre has got to be Kick-Ass.
Right.
Both the original book and the first movie. I'm going to stop at the first movie because the first movie is good. Not saying anything about the second at all. So I think that brought in a lot of ideas that you can mess around with superheroes. Other books such as Watchmen, for example, some people might think it's a little bit highbrow, you know. And looking back, and I say this quite a lot. Looking back now, when I read The Dark Knight Returns, and as graphic and as dark as that book can be, it reads now as a satire more than anything else. For me personally, I don't. You know,
well, I think that's how it was, intended. I think that's how Alan Moore kind of wrote it, because he was writing about this with this encyclopedic knowledge of Charlton Comics and all these different sort of the syntax of superheroes and villains, and that's what he was commenting on against the backdrop of the history in which the villains and heroes were relevant. And so, yeah, I think it was very much written like that. But because it brought in so many people who weren't, regular comics readers, they missed that layer of the storytelling entirely.
It becomes a little bit pretentious, and everyone's like, "Oh, I've read The Watchmen." And you're like, oh, and have you read Lord of the Rings? Oh, I've read Lord of the Rings. Oh, okay, great.
And I agree that Dark Knight as well comes off as a satire, but I think at the time it was just it was such a different, say, cooler version of Batman than what people were used to. That was what I reacted to as a teenager, and what a lot of people I think reacted to was just this was a lot more stylish and cool and exciting than what we were being regularly given in that character. And now, like you said, you can see it's a deep satire of the media and society.
Yeah, definitely. If you want, for me, I've always said that Year One is Frank Miller's best Batman story.
It's my favorite as well. Yeah, favorite Batman story, I think.
And people always go, "No, it's The Dark Knight." I'm like, is it though? Is it really?
Yeah.
Or is that your pretentiousness coming out?
It happens.
I'm saying. I had the pleasure in fact, I've had the pleasure a couple of times of speaking with Tom Payer from Ahoy Comics. What's it like working with Tom? Because to me, he comes across as one of the most nicest, genuine people.
He's easy to take advantage of for that reason. No, he's very creator friendly, which I guess is a nice way of saying easy to take advantage of. But he is been there, he's someone who's like, knows how to write a comic, so he knows what it's like and the creative choices that you have to make. So he's very giving in terms of letting you get away with whatever you can, and also making sure that you have enough time for the deadlines and stuff. He's the nicest whip cracker I've ever known.
Yeah.
Wow.
He is incredibly nice. He if you have a creative idea, he doesn't want to say no. Like it hurts him to say no. And we had a million ideas for this book for My Bad, and at one point we were trying to get them to let us make fake house ads, and he really wanted to do it. Like he was like, "Oh, that would be fun." But it's like the book kept getting more and more expensive with all the art we were looking for and stuff. So, even the things that are in there now, I feel like some editors would have said, "What is this nonsense? These extras you guys want to put in, Mark's toys or fake handbook pages and stuff we have planned in the future." He was game for all of it. And when I wrote to him and said, "Hey, do you think you would want to write some sort of like a Stan Lee soapbox type thing?" I mean, he was like, within 24 hours, there was a brilliant homage to Stan Lee's soapbox that he produced. So he's the best. I'm always going to be grateful for him because he's the guy who bought my first script, and I'm thrilled that we're still working with him on My Bad.
Cool. I've got to say that I think bit of echo there. I would say that. Is that just me?
Yeah, I can hear it.
I hear you fine.
Right, we'll try again. How's that? That's better.
Yep, sounds good.
Better.
Check out my headphones and my funky hair. Right, what was I going to say? Seems to me Ahoy Comics, for me, are one of the better of the up-and-coming indie books companies. I mean, you've got Ahoy, you've got Vault, you've got a whole host of people who are challenging. Mark, you've got a history with Dynamite. How different is working with Ahoy to working with Dynamite?
It's very different, if only because Dynamite works with pre-existing IP. So it's all licensed stuff. So you're more limited in what you can do with the IP. They try to keep you more within the realm of that universe. Although Dynamite gave me a lot of freedom too, to take, for example, Red Sonja in directions I don't think that character has been taken. They gave me as much freedom as they could, but you're still working with licensed IP. Whereas Ahoy, you're creating all your own stuff. So Ahoy is much more like working at for like Image or something like that. And there's more freedom, but I had good experiences working for both of them.
I would say not to argue with your comment, but look from the outside looking in, when you're talking about big two comics like Bats, Superman, Spider-Man, the Avengers, because of their attraction across multimedias, I sometimes feel that they themselves have now become licensed characters. You've lost the ability to kind of flex the muscles. Hence, you've got DC doing the black label stuff, and Marvel have got like umpteen different continuities running right now.
Yeah.
It's they've realized, you know what, our box that we normally play in is saturated. We can't do that anymore. Because who's buying comic books now? It's not kids. Kids aren't going in the comic book shops to buy books. I mean, my bad. It's clearly not aimed at kids, not for any foul language or anything like that, but because it's a homage piece. Yeah. To the stuff that we read as kids, right?
Right. And that's probably the only thing that I worry about my bad at all is the fact that will younger readers get this? I hope that they can still enjoy it. But you're right. We're playing with a lot of things that a younger person might not know about.
Right. I guess it's largely written for people who are used to comics.
Yeah. Definitely. Right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to run one of our house ads. They're not as fun as the adverts that are in My Bad. All right. But because it seems to me that this is a homage to the comics of yesteryear, logical choice, I'm afraid. Check out the ad. It's the Old Timers.
Do you want to find out what makes the professor do his happy dance? Check out the Old Timers Comic Book Show, only on the UCPN.
That's right, the Old Timers Comic Book Show, where the hosts aren't old, but the comics most certainly are. All right. Check out the new episode this week. We'll talk about a fair few surprises. I think the most recent one is unappreciated comic book creators. I won't tell you who got the most shouts for that one, but it's an interesting show. Go check it out. Okay.
Sounds interesting.
Spoiler. Should I give spoilers? Should I go? Well, mine was a Batgirl artist.
Ooh.
There you go. We also had a guy that did a lot of work for Valiant the first time round before doing some stuff for Marvel. And then we had a writer from the 60s or 70s of Marvel Comics who kind of got shafted over his writing style. So there you go. There's some teasers. Yeah. Cool. It's on our UCPN network. Okay, so back to this book, My Bad. Interestingly, you've got a raft of homage characters in there. You've got Batman Stroke the Shadow, with also a little bit of Dragonfly Man thrown in there, I think. Some Hulk. The Flash seems quite obvious. Not that I'm not interested in those characters. I am interested in the ones that couldn't cut the grade for whatever reason. Which stories are just too far out there for your characters? I'll tell you what. Let's see what we'll start with Bryce first before we move on to Max. Go on then.
Well, I kind of cheated, and I've snuck this character in a upcoming fruit pie ad, but I really wanted to include the American president John Adams, who's traveled through time and is for some reason now extremely powerful and strong and doesn't wear a shirt. and runs around in modern times fighting crime. So I've snuck him in on a fruit pie ad, and if we get a second season of My Bad, I think you'll see more of Amazing Adams, the superhuman time traveling second president of the United States.
There you go. Upholding the Constitution. Okay, cool.
I managed to sneak one in as a character that I originally tried to include in Wonder Twins, which I wrote for DC, and they said no way, not in a million years. But it's a half man, half lion villain named Lion L. Richie, and he looks like Lionel Richie. So yeah, Tom, like I think begrudgingly allowed me to put him in for a couple pages, but I think that even Ahoy was worried that this might get them sued. There's no love for Lion L. Richie because of the potential for the actual Lionel Richie's massive legal machinery to come crashing down upon you.
It would be class if all he spoke was with dialogue from songs, wouldn't it?
Well, there's one point where, the accelerator breaks in and Lionel Richie isn't in the room because he's like clinging to the ceiling, and then he says, "Hello, is it me you're looking for?" And then he drops on him. So, which probably doesn't help in terms of the potential lawsuit.
Yeah. Could you be any more obvious?
I would hope that Lionel Richie would like it. I would hope so.
I'm going to send him a 12 by 18 poster. Framed Lion L. Richie.
Yeah, I could just imagine the tagline on the poster. It's like, "Hey, I saw the video of Hello, and it inspired me so much not to create a clear model, but this instead." Right. Okay, so there's homages to characters and heroes that we all grew up with. So, gotta ask the big question. Are you a Marvel fan or a DC fan, Mark?
I grew up more with DC. I read more DC than Marvel, although I also really liked the Fantastic Four when I was a kid, just because it looked so good on the spinner rack, mostly because of the Thing. The Thing just always intrigued me, and like as a kid, looking at the spinner rack, I think Fantastic Four usually had the most messed up covers, and that's what usually attracted me as a kid buying comics from the spinner rack.
Cool. Fantastic Four, I used to read as a kid because it got a character called Johnny in it. What can I say?
Yeah.
Not many. Well, there is quite a few if you think about it, but back then, when I was a kid, there wasn't that many Johnnies in the comic books. Now I've found a fair few. Bryce, Marvel.
Yeah, Marvel. I always liked Teen Titans when I was very young because I really liked Robin, and I think I thought maybe that I could be a sidekick when I was a young kid. But aside from that, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, X-Men, once the Claremont and Byrne started doing that book, those were really important books to me. And those characters, I think, it helps that Jack Kirby created so much of the Marvel Universe, because I kind of, anything he did, it kind of works for me. And so a lot of my favorite stuff at DC is the Kirby stuff, the Fourth World stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm a Marvel guy, I guess I'd say.
Okay. So let me ask you a question then. It kind of alludes to what you both said earlier, in that, when we look back at our comic reading years, we always tend to stick to kind of, I suppose, one age. Like you mentioned there, Bryce, the Claremont Byrne X-Men. Now, if you're an X-Men fan, everybody loves that run. If you don't love that run of books, you don't like comics. It's as simple as that. Because you couldn't get, for your superhero stuff, you probably couldn't get much better than that at the time.
Right.
With Batman, you're talking Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil. Fantastic Four, you're talking Stanley Kirby. Spider-Man, there's a whole host of great Stanley, of course, loads of artists thereafter, like Ditko and Romita, and then eventually Romita again. So do you find then, when you kind of look back and think, well, we've got My Bad going on, do you find that because these characters that we've loved for so long are kind of stuck in that perpetual pendulum of storytelling,
Yes.
Do you feel there that My Bad can then, because it's so homagey, because it's annoying wink,
yeah,
but because the creator owns, you can do your own thing, like having a pissy Alfred, for example, instead of the prissy Alfred. Do you find that that's going to be the appeal for the book?
It's a lot of the fun of the book for me, and I think maybe for Mark, and earlier we were talking about not in a million years ideas. I think My Bad is kind of a good place for those ideas. It's a good repository for not in a million years ideas, and the freedom that goes with that, and the freedom as a storyteller to I don't want to give things away, but to do whatever we want with these characters.
Yeah.
And there's nobody's gonna go, oh no, we gotta sell toys, and so you can't do that. That there's none of that we have to worry about. And so it is fun to be able to have a thought about one of these characters that if you were writing for the big two, you would never get to do. But here we can play as much as we want and have as much freedom to surprise the readers, hopefully, as we want to.
You say about figures. I will tell you right now, there is a company. Do you remember Eagle Force Toys? No? Eagle Force were out about 40 years ago, and they were kind of like, I'm going to say this in a nice way. I mean, this is a complimentary way. They were like to G.I. Joe what the GoBots were to Transformers.
Okay, I got you. Yeah.
Cool. So, but they've got a really die-hard fan base. And if you Google them and you check them, they've got like a sister company that do a whole range of figures. So, for example, a lot of the Dynamite characters that they're licensed, they do figures, and they're like the old school 5 articulated figures and stuff like that. And they do raise it by Kickstarter and stuff like that. So, might be worth. You never know. You might get.
I'm not against toys. I'm not against toys. I'm only
get that Acid Chimp action figure.
That would be great. Yeah, I just don't want the toys to be in control.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. It's one of my pet peeves, and I've said it so many times. I hate it when movies drive the comic book, not the other way around.
Yeah. Right.
Because it's like the original material, right? You should go back to the source and respect the source. But unfortunately, more people are going to watch Avengers movies than they're going to read Avengers comics.
Yeah, I think it's really backwards because, the comics are where you aren't investing a lot of resources. It's where you are, they cost much less, relatively speaking, to make than, TV shows or movies or lines of toys. So that's where you should be taking your risks. That's where you should be making, stuff that might not pan out, but it's okay if it doesn't, because you are risking a relatively minor amount of money. And that's where you should have the most amount of freedom. But yeah, because the tail is wagging the dog and the movies seem to be dictating more what you can do in the comics, it's destroyed this what could have been a great source of innovation for the industry.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The fact that they are the main characters of the main universes are stuck in that cyclic battle.
Right.
It's really if I get surprised by a big 2 book, I'm impressed. You've got to like go, whoa. I think Nick Spencer on Amazing Spider-Man, I wasn't a big fan up until the point where it looked like, because he was bringing everybody back, it was going to be, oh no, this is MJ's Gwen scene. MJ's going to get it. She's going to die. And I was really invested in the story for it. And then the next issue was, oh yeah, it was just all fake blood. And I'm like, what? Really? Is that it?
Yeah.
And I was like, how could you fool me? How could you do that?
I feel the same way, Johnny, and I get really excited now if a big 2 book surprises me, like Immortal Hulk did when it came out, or what Jonathan Hickman has done with the X-Men. It seems almost impossible to do that at a big 2. And Mark, they don't let him take over Superman or Batman wholly, but they let him play around with those characters. And Mark's another person that gets away with some interesting things that I'm not expecting from those characters.
I mean, Mark, I absolutely enjoyed your run on Red Sonja, because at the time, Sonja had just gone through like a whole cheesecake kind of thing. Amy Chu was writing the book, and then of course you had Sonja Vampirella book, which was fantastic. You had Vampy, Sonia meets Betty and Veronica, and you kind of like, yeah, that's fun as well. But then you kind of went and did the whole Game of Thrones thing to style with it. And
yeah, the thing that attracted me to writing Red Sonja was the fact that they allowed me to bring in like a different set of influences, a different text. So it's not really about, you know, the past Red Sonja or even about past Sword and Sandal stories. It's really more based on the histories of Herodotus and the sort of exotic stories he told. In particular, Queen Tomyris, who was the leader of a steppes tribe called the Massagatai, who defeated Cyrus the Great, who was at that point the most powerful man in the world. So in a lot of ways, my story, at least the first 12 issues of my Red Sonja run, were really based loosely on this historical story as told through the eyes of Herodotus, who was more of a fabulist than he was actually a historian. But that's kind of the feel I wanted to have for it, and you know, they let me get away with that for 24 issues. So that was nice.
And again, I mean, this is a compliment. When I think of Red Sonja, you do get the cheesecake element in there, but your book felt more mature, more European, if I may say so, in the kind of the way it was structured to be practically at times it felt like it was prose with pictures, not comic book. You know, I mean that as a compliment. It was a. You picked it up, and you know you're going to be sat down for at least a good half hour going through this book. You know,
well, thank you.
Before you'd be like, "Oh look, pretty picture. Oh, she's a mankini. Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm done."
Well, one thing you know I've discovered is that it really doesn't matter what's come before. It doesn't really matter what people's expectations are. You can subvert those expectations, and people will often thank you for them. You know, it's okay. You don't have to worry about it. I learned that very early on the Flintstones. It's like I made a Flintstones comic that was probably not what anybody was expecting me reading, but I think, you know, people like that, and so I tried to bring the same sort of instinct to Red Sonja, where it's like, yeah, this is not going to be like the cheesecake Red Sonja as you're used to, but that's okay. If you don't want to read it, we'll find new readers.
Yeah. It's funny how you mentioned how Bryce, you mentioned that Mark can play with the big characters, but only in a little smaller way. There's a guy called Alex Packnadle who
I know Alex.
Yeah, you know Alex.
Yeah, no, I love this comic series Friendo that he did.
Yeah, Friendo.
I got to know him because of that, but yeah, he's a great guy.
And he's got a Doctor Strange book, Avengers book coming out this week from Marvel, and I've read it and it's great because it's Alex and he writes great no matter what he says about himself. But what I find interesting is that Marvel have got this creator who, when they do their events and they need the tie-in books, they'll say, Alex, can you come and do this story about the Avengers, please? Cheers, thanks. But they won't give him a shot on the main book. And the main book is like mired in its own continuity, its own, you know, the Phoenix Force attacking the Avengers and all that sort of stuff. And I think, well, he's this guy who's got these really great ideas and his independent stuff. And when he does like the lesser known tie-ins, he gets to play again with new ideas and stuff. It just frustrates me so much. That,
he's a great, unique voice. You probably read the issue of Immortal Hulk that he co-wrote.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. But yeah, he's got a unique vision, which is at once thrilling, but at the same time kind of scary. For you know, when you're handing over the key, when you're handing out the keys to your fleet of cars, it's like your first thought is maybe I don't give the keys of the Ferrari to this guy. Yeah. And I've you know, went through some of that myself, you know, at DC, where it's like maybe this isn't the guy you give the keys to the Porsche to, maybe it's the guy you give the keys to the VW bus to. But you know, I built my career off of driving the VW bus.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes it would be nice to, you know, drive the Porsche.
I think another creator who's done well from that point of view is Ram V. You know, his work on Vault Comics then led to.
Yeah, he's got like 3 or 4 Porsches at this point.
Well, yeah, I mean, his Catwoman book has been interesting. It's been a lot better than other Catwoman books have been. When you think there's a character that's been around for so long, DC still can't seem to get to know what to do with her. Yeah, whereas Marvel have given to Jed McKay, and Jed's absolutely killing Black Cat. It's a fantastic book. If you want a fun read,
Really?
just go to Black Cat. Yeah, it's really cheeky. It's kind of, she goes through this whole thing. Whatever she happens, to be, there'll always something that reminds her of Mary Jane, and she'll say things like, "Why is the world all into redheads?" and stuff like this. It's just kind of this constant sort of. So you got to know your Spider-Man stuff to get it, but for a fun book where you don't have to, kind of worry about continuity so much and you just go with the flow, Black Cat's up there.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So big shout
out. I loved when years ago when Warren Ellis did that little 6-issue run on Moon Knight that was no continuity, that was just stories. It was really fun. I love that kind of stuff.
We talked about Moon Knight on the Old Timers a little while ago. So there you go. That's cool. Right. So Bryce, this is probably more of a question for you than it is for Mark. Although Mark, please feel free to chip in. Bryce, if I could hand you the keys to the Porsche,
yeah,
which Porsche would it be? Which character would it be that you would like to write?
Well, my answer used to be the Hulk, but I feel after Immortal Hulk, maybe. I don't know if I'm up to.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
maybe. But really, we mentioned it before. All of us have the Fantastic Four. Was like I had when I was a kid. I had a little pocket novel book, style, novel size, like a little paperback novel that had the first 6 issues of Lee and Kirby's Fantastic Four in it, and I probably read it 100 times as a kid. I can remember the printing errors in the book, like what part of the story the printing errors were in and stuff. So I feel like it's a sort of in my DNA. I like the fact that they're adventurers before they are superheroes who are looking for a fight, and I would love to sort of apply my imagination to a group of characters that are just exploring and adventuring.
Are you reading the?
Love them all. Love all 4 characters.
Are you reading the book at the minute?
I'm reading. Yes, I am. I'm a few issues behind. I just recently read the 60th anniversary one with all the Kangs and Ramatut and stuff, and I enjoyed that.
Okay, cool. There's a couple of changes coming your way that might pop your socks off, I'm afraid, on that one. So.
Oh yeah. Okay.
In a good way.
Yeah.
I like the kind of impact of what's happened. So I'm not saying any more. I'm not spoiling it.
Yeah. No, there's definitely, you could feel that this run is trying to do some different things, and I've been appreciating that.
Cool. And Mark, you're a comic veteran now, so maybe the question doesn't have the same sort of weight for yourself. But character-wise, is there any character you think to yourself, you know what, I would absolutely love to get my hands on and write?
For me, the answer has probably always been Superman.
Always Superman. Cool. Do you think that his powers make him? He's a question. Does his powers make him too powerful? Is he?
Well, I think that the kind of the knock on Superman, the popular sort of critique, is that he's too powerful and it makes him boring. But for me, the thing that makes him interesting has nothing to do with the power. It's the fact that he doesn't go crazy. Yeah. It's the fact that he has his power and he's still able to be a good person. And that's the story I want to write. It's like, what is it to wield power responsibly? What is it to be a good person when every incentive in the world is pulling you the opposite way?
Yeah, excellent. There's I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I think it's Adventures of Superman and a Man of Steel 2-parter back in the 90s. And Clark Kent is in his apartment. Check out the Old Timers because we talked about it. The professor picked this book, and he can hear the husband beating the wife, but he can't do anything about it, right? Because she won't press charges or anything like that. And there's whole 2 issues. It's him. It's not him X-raying, zapping anyone or punching anyone, but it's he goes back to the farm to talk to Pa because he could do something if he wanted to. He could just throw him into the sun, but. That whole, and I think I agree with you to an extent. I think Captain Marvel, the current Carol Danvers Captain Marvel, is in the same sort of boat, and I think that's why both heroes have such a cool supporting cast. because it's the supporting cast that help ground them. If the stuff doesn't happen to Superman, stuff happens to Jimmy or Lois or Perry. Yeah, and that's kind of how that kind of dynamic works, at least from my point of view. But you guys are the professionals. I just read the stuff, right?
Right.
That sounds about right, though.
Hey, I have one more. I have one more character I thought of while you guys were talking. And I've thought about this character a lot as we've been working on My Bad. I don't know if anyone other than Keith Giffen is allowed to do Ambush Bug, but man, I'd love to get my hands on Ambush Bug.
I should have known. I should have known. Right, one last question about My Bad then before we sign off. Are there any plans in the My Bad universe for female superheroes? I see a distinct lack of Wondrous Woman.
Well, we are hoping to be able to do a second series, and yeah, hopefully we'd be more, there'd be more female characters and superheroes in that. But you know, this series has been largely about the vanity of superheroes and villains, which I think tends to naturally point you more towards men. Sorry to say, but yeah, we would love to be able to expand this universe horizontally and create a lot more heroes that show up and do a lot more storylines about different heroes and hero types.
Okay, cool.
I was discussing this with a female friend of mine just a few days ago, and she said, well, you know, there's all these guys in this book, and I said, yeah, I think it's kind of almost low-hanging fruit. I find it's easier to make a male character who's annoying or stupid, and she challenged me. She was like, oh, there's plenty of annoying and stupid women, so you can do that too. So I think that, yeah, I'll try to rise to that challenge in the future.
I think looking from the outside in, I think it's a hard task to do, actually, because, you know, there's a lot of dialogue and conversation about how certain genders, certain non-binary characters, certain lifestyles, however you want to say, are portrayed in comic books. So when you then try to pull the funny on it, you know, it's a tightrope, isn't it? Really, to be fair, you know, because you can take them, you can lampoon Batman, and everyone laughs at that, but lampoon Wonder Woman, and there will be hell to pay.
You know, I think part of it is like, what are you lampooning, or what is it you're making fun of? And if you're making fun of, like, you know, people's pretensions, or, you know, people's worse instincts, then I think no matter who the character is, it's okay. You don't make fun of Wonder Woman for being a woman. You don't make fun of, you know, an LGBTQ character for being LGBTQ. You don't find the humor in their orientation. You find the humor in the things that we can all recognize are, you know, wrong, or the things that, like, the pretensions of a character, their hubris, their need to, like, take vanity and pretend like it's for the common good. These are the sorts of things we're poking fun of at My Bad. So I don't think that would preclude us from, you know, including characters from, you know, other backgrounds. It's just, you know, this is a story primarily about these two characters that just happen to be archetypical, you know, white male hero villains when we wrote them.
Yeah. And when I was first doing the backup version of My Bad with Peter Krause, he decided that he wanted the Accelerator to look like a black man. And we had to back away from that because we didn't want it to be misinterpreted as some sort of critique of black African Americans or anything like that. And that's why he's blue, honestly, is because, you know, nobody's going to be upset about a blue guy who's selfish and money grubbing and whatnot.
Yeah, cool, good, well done. I suppose with Wonder Woman, you talked about low hanging fruit. If you had a Wonder Woman pastiche or a parody, she'd always end up tied up at the end of the book. You know?
Yeah, it's a William H. Marston thing.
That's just like low hanging fruit. That's you know. Yeah. If everyone wants to hurt me, that's fine. Go look at the old covers. You'll find out for yourselves.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah, cool. All right, guys. That's it for the show. Thank you very much for taking the time out. Really do appreciate it. Don't forget to check out My Bad. It's out on the 3rd of November, wherever wherever good comic books are sold. Is that available digitally?
Yes, definitely. Comixology. Yeah.
Yeah. Boo. I'm a comic in my hand kind of guy. So,
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
The
best way.
Yeah. So Comixology for you digital fans, it's out in the shops. For you floppy hard copy fans, go for that. And of course, Mark, thank you for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Cool. Don't disappear at the end of the show. Bryce, same again, man. Thank you very much for spending the time. Really appreciated it. And that's it. So don't forget to check out the UCPN for all your favorite pods, including the Old Timers Comic Book Show, the Definitive Crusade. It's all about your favorite DC books. And of course, the No Prize podcast for everything that's Marvel, including all the Disney Plus stuff. All right. So that's it. We're out of here. This is Join the Machine Hughes. Adios.